Alright, this is going to be a challenging video, but it should be a lot of fun. About 6 months ago, I posted this debate where I'm talking to a volunteer at a Trump rally, another young dude, and we debate election fraud, we debate January 6th, and while it's actually a pretty good conversation, I remember checking the comments a week after I posted it, and they were brutal. People were saying it was my worst performance, my worst debate to date, and honestly, I wasn't even offended. I can take feedback, and I think there's a lot of value in going over my mistakes, especially when they're on camera. I've done about 50 of these Trump rally debates, and if one of them isn't my best, why would I be offended? So let's go through and see where I could have done better. I also want to read some of your guys' constructive comments so we can make this channel better, and this will be a fun video. Make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe, and let's jump into this debate with Brody and I talking about January 6th, about 6 months back.
When you think about January 6th, do you think Mike Pence was in the right for certifying the election results, for upholding his duty to the Constitution, or do you think he should have stopped that peaceful transfer of power?
I think he should have. Trump and people in Trump's administration were requesting him to delay it so they could look into the court cases that were going on, because when he did this, a lot of the court cases were still ongoing. And there was still a lot of investigation.
Most of them had been closed, and 33 of them were actually shot down due to evidentiary reasons, these court cases. They brought this evidence, and they said there's not enough evidence. About 13, or maybe it was 14 of the cases were actually rescinded. They were pulled by the people who brought the cases, and then another 15 or so were shot down based on standing. So, which makes me wonder, all of these court cases that he brought, I just don't think there was enough evidence to overturn the election.
Okay, so I do start off strong there, and I point out that Donald Trump made massive claims of election fraud, but that wasn't backed up in any courts. Everything I said there was true, but I do let it get away here. Take a listen.
Of evidence to overturn the election.
And which states were these in? Just out of the few.
All the key swing states. So a lot of the cases were in Georgia, of course. There was a case in Pennsylvania and Arizona. So all of these, the Fulton County cases, of course. So a lot of these judges, though, were appointed by Donald Trump himself. So he appointed these people because he trusted them, and they said, hey, there's not enough evidence for election fraud. And then you see people in Trump's cabinet that he trusted with his life. People like Mike Pence, people like Bill Barr, people like Mark Meadows, Mark Esper. All of these people kept saying, hey, man, there's not enough evidence. So sometimes it scares me when Trump kept pushing that lie, doubling down on what I think was an election fraud lie. And then this all culminated into January 6th, where he holds a rally 10 minutes from the ellipse, and then he says...
What did he say? What did he say?
He said a few things. So you can take one line about peacefully take back your country.
But what else do you need?
You need to take into factor the months of context leading up to it, where he's doubling down.
This is what I don't understand. I think it's funny when people, look. If you want to look at exactly what he said, what did he say? He said we're going to go down to the Capitol and we're going to peacefully and patriotically make our voices heard.
But this was after months of him saying that.
Did he incite violence that day?
He absolutely did, and that was a weak answer for me. There were 100 better ways I could have responded, so let's look at what Donald Trump said on that day. His exact words, as Brody says here. Donald Trump said, quote, "We're not going to take it any longer. You will have an illegitimate president. That's what you'll have. Quote, we cannot let that happen. They rigged an election. They rigged it like they've never rigged it before." He then said, quote, "We will never give up. We will never concede. It just doesn't happen. We can't concede. When there's theft involved, our country has had enough." The audience then started to chant, "Fight for Trump. Fight for Trump." And he said, "We will not take it anymore. We will stop the steal. We're not going to let it happen. I'm not going to let it happen." He then says, "I hope Mike Pence is going to do the right thing. I hope so, because if Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election." So I should have just bit the bullet right there and said, absolutely, Donald Trump incited violence that day. But what I tried to do is this broader tactic of not getting pulled into the exact day of January 6th or the exact riot, which, hear me out for a second. It's a valid tactic. It just didn't land here. Sometimes Trump supporters try to drag you down this rabbit hole of exactly what happened on January 6th and with Ashley Babbitt, when that completely misses the point. The bad thing about January 6th was not Billy Bob raiding the Capitol. It was that Donald Trump, for months before, spread lies about widespread election fraud, lied about all of our institutions, he pressured election officials, he had fake slates of electors, him and John Eastman tried to pressure Brad Raffensperger. All of Trump's behavior that is the antithesis of America, that was the real behavior. So I was trying to make that point, but I'm not trying to make excuses. This was 4 hours into our filming session, and we had a flight in 2 hours, so we were about to wrap it up, and I was just not on point. You can clearly tell I'm not on point here, and I should have just pointed out that Donald Trump did incite violence that day. Instead, I'm trying to make this broader argument, and I've seen some of my favorite debaters get sucked into this sometimes too. I really like to watch other debaters, and I see them get pulled down this rabbit hole of debating whether or not people broke windows on January 6th, which they did, but that misses the entire point. So let's watch the rest of this.
I think in a roundabout way, the months leading up to it, over and over he said...
Is that enough for a conviction? Roundabout?
It should be.
It's not black letter law.
Well, let me tell you, for the months leading up to it, he kept saying, every institution is against you. Everybody in America is lying to you. You can't trust this. You can't trust that. There is election fraud. So when people go to the Capitol...
Okay, my point is valid here, but I shouldn't have used the word roundabout. I don't know why I said in a roundabout way. I should have just said, yes, Donald Trump absolutely incited violence, not only on that day, but for months beforehand. I keep trying to come back to that point because it's very important. It's not just about that speech. Don't let Trump supporters isolate that one speech and think that that's the entire argument. No, Trump laid the groundwork of election fraud for so long. But then Brody right here asks if that's enough for a conviction. I'm sorry, is lying about election fraud, pressuring election officials, and getting your supporters to raid the Capitol enough for a conviction? Yes. And at this point, I'm just thinking Merrick Garland should not have slow-walked this case for multiple years. Merrick Garland should have just gotten things done, but all we can do now is go back and see where we went wrong.
On the day Mike Pence is certifying the election results, and they interrupt the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in American history. They delayed it by, I think it was like 6 hours. They had to do it later, maybe 8 hours. That scares me because I like the Constitution. When we saw Mike...
We all do too, and we're trying to save it from people that are trying to destroy it.
People that are trying to destroy it. Donald Trump said he wants to terminate it.
But I will say this, and this has to be very...
Didn't Donald Trump himself say he wants to terminate the laws and the rules in the Constitution?
He was concerned with some of the rulings and was concerned with how they were being connected to the Constitution. That was what he was saying.
Well, okay, so watch how this kid just slipped out of that. He says, we want to preserve the Constitution. We love it. And then he says, yeah, maybe we should nuke the Constitution for X reason. And then I push back.
That's another thing that people are always misconstruing. But I want to say this in terms of January 6th. I think this is very key. Me, myself, and I will be very clear with this. I do not support any of the people that were going in there to cause havoc.
Of course.
I'm very clear on that. If you
That's
were
fair.
in there and you were causing problems and you were disrupting the halls of Congress, that they need to be held responsible.
I should have asked him if he thinks they should be pardoned, because Donald Trump is literally running on pardoning these people.
What needs to also be held in account is looking at the tapes that Speaker McCarthy released. Look at the police officers. Why were police officers standing there giving fist bumps to people walking down the halls of Congress? That's my other question. You had all these police officers there. Why were they not being held responsible?
But when you look at the Tucker Carlson tapes, Tucker Carlson released like a 20-minute highlight reel of his favorite moments, but there are like 30,000 hours of footage out there of people breaching different entry points, people breaking through windows. There's videos of Ashley Babbitt climbing through a window and getting shot.
Which was horrible.
Oh my god, it's not horrible, number one, she deserved it, but number two, I'm making a good point here, but again, I could have done it in a sharper way. I just wasn't really sharp here, but what I'm saying is you can cherry pick any clips you want. Yes, there's a clip of people fist bumping on January 6th out of the tens of thousands of people that were there. I'm sure some cops were sympathetic, but you can also find way more footage of people breaching the 4 different breach points, people beating the shit out of police officers with American flags. I mean, that's what I should have said. For every single one clip you can find of somebody giving a fist bump, I can show you 10 clips of people beating the shit out of an American officer, out of an officer with an American flag. I should have gone harder, for sure.
What, did she climb through the window or did she go through?
Well, it was horrible that she, I obviously don't approve of what she did.
Yeah.
But what was horrible was that police officer shot her and killed her. And you know what else in this country? When you kill someone, you go to jail. When that police officer killed her, he got an award.
Well, you should understand self-defense more than most people, more than like liberals, right? So, and Ashley Babbitt should also understand self-defense.
Was she threatening his life?
That window was the last barrier between hundreds of people, hundreds of those rioters you were talking about, and our Congress people. That was the last barrier. So when she's breaking in and people are pointing guns at her and they were yelling, "Stop, don't do this," then essentially it should be implied, especially for a veteran, she should know what self-defense looks like.
Listening to his points annoys me though, because he's purposefully misconstruing what the problem is here. Nobody's claiming that one officer, that his life was in danger. Nobody's claiming that Ashley Babbitt was going to go and kill that one officer. The claim is that the thousands of people behind Ashley Babbitt were going to go and hurt our congressmen and congresswomen.
that you shouldn't be able to breach through that window. And I think when he shot her, I think it was justified. I think it was okay, because if she would have gotten through, yeah, I mean, maybe he.
See, that's a shame. That's sad.
That's sad? Okay.
Again, I'm not here.
Do you think the hundreds of people behind her should have been able to break through and hurt our Congress people?
Well, my question is, what happened leading up to then? Because if you look at...
Okay, right here I should have asked the question again. No, answer my question. Do you think that the hundreds of people should have been able to break through with no repercussions or no force pushing them back? This whole video is to make sure that I have these skills over the next 4 years, and I'm pointing out my weak spots. I should have just asked the question again, and I've gotten better at that. If you've seen me on these debate panels on Newsmax recently, I have improved, but watch this.
Exactly what happened with President Trump requesting National Guard and Muriel Bowser, not Muriel Bowser, maybe it was, I don't know, the mayor of D.C., looking at what she did and her part, and Speaker Pelosi, what they were doing to stop National Guard from coming in.
I think that I've heard that it's the other way around. Donald Trump was sitting.
But again, that's what they say.
Well, that's what the official report says, is that Donald Trump was sitting there watching this unfold on TV.
The corrupt kangaroo court, January 6th.
You think they were corrupt?
Oh, they were horrible. They did such a disservice, and you look at what they did to delete files and remove paperwork. There was clear evidence that...
These are all just conspiracy theories. Where do you even start at this point? Number one, there were supposed to be many more Republicans on the J6 committee, but they didn't want to do it so that they could claim it was politicized. Number two, it's funny because he cites the tapes from the January 6th committee earlier on in this when it suits his narrative, but that's because they were selectively edited by Tucker Carlson and his team. He watched those, but all of a sudden when Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney and the rest of the J6ers are part of it, the one thing I did here is let him cut me off way too much. I don't know why I let him cut me off or why I was being so polite. I think, to be honest, I do think there were people behind the camera lining up and watching, so sometimes it's hard to kind of be a firm asshole when there's 20 Trump supporters watching, but let's keep watching.
Trump, and again, I don't even know why we're talking about this, because when you look at what happened, there are J6ers still in prison today. When you have BLM rioters that were just burning down police buildings in Minneapolis, federal police buildings.
I don't agree with the BLM rioters burning stuff down.
Why are they not held accountable? Why are they not still in jail?
They weren't trying to commit sedition. They weren't trying to interrupt the peaceful transfer of power.
Federal police building?
I can't tell what's pissing me off more right now, his absolutely terrible points or my lack of response. I mean, I don't know why I wasn't just hammering home right here, dude. Number one, many BLM rioters were held accountable. Number two, President Biden and Kamala Harris condemned anybody who rioted against buildings. I mean, most liberals would say, yeah, we support BLM, but don't be burning down random ma and pa shops. And number three, it's not the same. It is not the same as January 6th whatsoever, which I'm trying to point out here, but I'm just really slow in this clip for some reason. I should have pointed out a few things. Number one, BLM was based in reality. George Floyd was actually killed on camera. Election fraud did not happen on camera. There's widespread statistics showing Black Americans are treated worse by police officers. There's not widespread data showing that there was election fraud. So, on top of that, the people there for January 6th were summoned by the president with the sole intention of stopping the peaceful transfer of power and placing pressure on Mike Pence so that Donald Trump could entrench his power. The people who showed up at BLM were 95% peaceful, and the rioters that were there were just opportunists. We can all bite that bullet. There were probably rioters there who were opportunists, as there always are, but I really should have just pinned him down right here. I let him slip out. I let him cut me off way too much.
That's federal. It's federal grounds.
But a lot of people were arrested. You know, thousands of people were arrested for the BLM protests. It's different though, because
it's not different. It's not.
Were they trying to?
It is absolutely different. Sedition or interrupting the peaceful transfer of power or trying to hang Mike Pence is different from throwing a bottle at a federal building or spray painting graffiti. It is totally different, and conservatives are willfully dumb if they don't think this.
Interrupt the peaceful transfer of power in America. This is a tradition that's been upheld since the inception of America. It's so much different because they were trying.
But again, no matter how you feel about what happened in this election.
I'm glad we're having this talk too. It's a good one.
Yeah. No matter how you feel about this election, if you look at any time in our history, and if a group of people, no matter if they're right or wrong, they may not be warranted, they may be warranted in what they feel, but if you believe in your heart that your election and your vote did not count and was stolen from you, I'd be at the Capitol. I wasn't there on January 6th, but if I felt that my vote was being disenfranchised and I did not have the...
Bro thinks he's Benjamin Franklin randomly. He's going off on a speech about his vote being disenfranchised after he's saying that, yeah, maybe I would be at the Capitol if I wanted to. You know, I want to read some constructive comments in 1 second, but let's finish up this debate.
Disenfranchised, and I did not have the same right as everyone else in this country, I'd be at the Capitol.
Well, when it comes to the Proud Boys who were charged with seditious conspiracy, they actually had a plan to go in there, and people went in there with certain like weapons, like zip ties. Someone had a taser on them, not guns or anything, but they did have weapons. And when you think about this, the seditious conspiracy, this idea of going in and stopping, thwarting this peaceful transfer of power, that's something I don't agree with. Even if you think election fraud was real and that it was justified.
Let me ask you this, and let me just.
And also, he says that he doesn't want his vote disenfranchised, but isn't that exactly what Donald Trump is doing when he calls Brad Raffensperger? I mean, right there, I should have brought up the Brad Raffensperger phone call and said, dude, you want to talk about disenfranchising votes? What about Donald Trump asking Raffensperger to find the exact amount of votes that he needed to win the state of Georgia? That disenfranchises the entire state, and Brad Raffensperger held strong, not because he's some deep state warrior, but because he actually believes in the rule of law.
Just to throw it back,
yeah, of course.
If your vote was truly not counted and your vote was thwarted, what would you do? You just sit back and throw your hands up and say, you know what, I'm done. There's no point for me. My vote didn't count this year. Maybe I'll wait in 4 more years.
I'm sure everybody watching this, I'm sure we at MeidasTouch would all be fighting like hell until the end, but we wouldn't be lying about election fraud. See, I got thousands of comments after this last election about a month ago saying, Adam, why aren't you talking about these rumors of fraud? Because they were all rumors. They weren't substantiated by anybody legit. They came from random Twitter and Facebook posts. Now, if the district attorney of Philadelphia, Larry Krasner, the guy who went viral for saying, F around, find out, we won't let any election fraud here, he's a huge Democrat. If he would have come out and said there was election fraud, then we would have played that video, but not a single lawyer, not a single district attorney, no legitimate Democratic politician said there was fraud, and there was no fraud. So that is different than Donald Trump from a top-down level making claims of fraud.
I think I would protest, but not in the way they did it on January 6th, and I think
and also, we wouldn't be calling to hang whoever the VP is, I can tell you
the
that.
roots of the
So you
problem.
understand why people would be there?
I understand it, but I also think they were misled. I don't think there was enough election fraud for people to.
But that's a different conversation. The conversation then.
That's what we were talking about the whole time. Did Donald Trump lead the people to be there? What did he say on that day? Who was misleading them?
Needs to be, maybe they were misled.
So then maybe the onus should be, who misled them? Donald Trump? Should the onus be placed on Donald Trump and the media?
That's a total argument of if they were misled.
And now I'm just letting him slip out of this shamelessly. And I'm going to be 100% honest. Not only is this dude in the wrong for just lying to my face, but I'm in the wrong for letting this happen. I mean, in the moment, I remember I was really tired and cold. I couldn't control it. But this dude is straight up gaslighting me and saying, that's not the conversation we're having. When he was the one earlier in the video who was making the argument that Donald Trump's rhetoric didn't lead to January 6th. And then when I prove that later in the video, when I prove that these people were misled, then he all of a sudden says, wait a minute, that's not the conversation we're having. You guys can see why these conversations get frustrating. I'd like to read this comment that I got yesterday that I found very interesting. Credit goes to Tench Frost, and he left some constructive criticism. Some of it is warranted, some of it is not. So, for some context, I was talking about how Donald Trump keeps threatening Justin Trudeau and saying that he wants to grab Canada. So this guy says, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you guys always miss the point with these stories. The only ones who don't like the bullies are the ones getting bullied. It's not the insult you think it is to anyone else. Betas will always view Trump's actions as alpha strength because power is overwhelmingly defined by those who get what they want, not by how they did it. So the point that he makes is actually very valid, but I also make this point all the time. In the video that he's commenting on, I said, Donald Trump is using these strongman tactics. Donald Trump is trying to appear as a strongman bully to try to pander to the dumbest people in his fan base. So I agree with what he's saying, but then he puts it in very good wording right here. Listen, he says, the fact that everything Trump does is by force or by fraud is irrelevant, and the times that he doesn't get what he wants doesn't matter as long as the optics are manipulated to make it seem like he did, like claiming that Mexico's president promised to close the border when she said no such thing. Pointing out how weak and insecure he really is will never resonate with those who idolize him. Have we not been paying attention to what those fools say? Quote, we need a strong man, someone who gets things done, someone who isn't afraid to speak his mind. They don't say that we need someone honest, or with intelligence, or strength, or even a basic understanding of how to run the country. They literally say they just want brute force. Again, this guy is making an amazing point. Trump supporters don't even care that he's weak or insecure, but I do think he's wrong in aiming it at me. If you watch my videos, I am always talking about how Trump is only pretending to be a strong man to pander to people, and I totally understand how MAGA views him. I mean, I talk to them all of the time. He then says, they like the insanity and the threats because that's the only type of power these people can recognize. They can't see when power comes with diplomacy, like Biden or Obama or Kamala. They can't see that you can delicately balance your own country's needs with another's by building alliances or crafting mutually beneficial deals. But they can see threats to invade someone or bomb someone or deport people en masse. And what his supporters don't get is that all of Trump's power comes from our nation being powerful. He brings nothing to the table himself beyond the following that foolishly handed the power to him, and subsequently to all of the lunatics that he'll bring in. Again, this dude snapped. He's really cooking with this comment. I agree with all of it. He meant it as constructive criticism, but I think I say a lot of this stuff too. All of his confidence to speak to world leaders how he does and threaten them how he does comes from the country that he, again, controls. Like a child with a gun that's too big for him, right? That's what makes him even more dangerous than other dictatorial leaders who actually know what they're doing. Unlike them, he's in charge of the most powerful country on earth and just gets to waddle through it. Fellow fascists love him because they have the intellect to easily manipulate him, shaping our policy to benefit them. Meanwhile, normal leaders are put in a difficult tradition where they're forced to play along, not because he's so strong, but because he's so destructive. That's why Trudeau plays along. That's why Sheinbaum didn't play along, but she did hop on the phone with him. So I really do appreciate this constructive criticism. He says, Trump doesn't care that Americans will suffer from his posturing on tariffs or anything else. Apathy isn't strength, but his followers don't understand that either. Another reason why they love him. Very well said, and since we've been dissecting my debate skills for the last 20 minutes, let's see how they've progressed. This one is only from about a month ago, and I think this performance is a lot better. There were comments on the video with Brody saying something to the effect of, Adam, you should just stop debating, but no, you keep practicing and then this happens.
That his first 4 years, though. Why didn't he already do that? I can put the same question
because
back
he
to
was actually creating a foundation.
In 2018, the largest tax cut in modern American history.
And
he created such a good foundation that 92% of his advisors turned on him. All of his closest generals turned on him. He lost his vice president. What kind of person builds a foundation that they have to completely restart fresh their next administration? I mean, Brylan, can you tell me why Mike Pence isn't his VP anymore?
Adam, I appreciate you asking the questions, but I'm going to take the reins back since we're the hosts.
But also, I want to respond to something Brylan said really quickly, because I was at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. I go to these rallies and I have very respectful conversations with Trump's biggest supporters, and there is one common theme among all of them, and it's that none of them can name a single economic policy from Trump. So when it comes to VP Harris, she has a housing plan for people like Brylan and I, first-time home buyers, so we get a tax incentive. When it comes to the child tax credit, a $6,000 child tax credit, not a giveaway, but an incentive for people to build families. Also an incentive for small businesses to start up with a tax deduction. And I don't know if this is loud, but I'd like to pose the question to Brylan. Can you name a single economic policy that Trump has for Gen Z? Just a single policy.
Well, first, let me say to that, why hasn't she done it? Why has she not encouraged
She's not the president?
The president, yeah, well, she has lunch with the president at least once a week, hopefully more than once a week, and she could be encouraging these policies. She hasn't done that.
She's not Biden.
She's been on an economic task force at the White House.
Wow,
really quickly, I want to ask you one more time. Can you name a single policy? Can you name one single policy? Because you completely didn't answer my question. Is it the tariffs?
I think he did, actually, Adam. I think he named quite a number of policies.
Okay, so then they try to gaslight me into thinking that he did answer it, but you can see. I learned right there. I did the thing where I re-asked the question. I said, you didn't answer. I'm going to ask you one more time. Did he have any policies? Can you name a single policy? And it actually worked. It shows that they are full of shit. So I'm learning. We're getting better. Drop a like and subscribe if you want to support and join the community. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.